Alrighty, so we are continuing in the Rambam in Hilchos Yesodei Torah Perek Chamishi. So quick review of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem in terms of what the Rambam said. So basically, I'll verbally go through the flow chart. Okay, so there's two categories of mitzvos. There's the big three, that's Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayos, and Shfichos Damim, and then there's all the other mitzvos. So you always give up your life on the big three. And then with the other mitzvos, if it's a time of religious persecution, when they're trying to annihilate the abolish one mitzvah or all of mitzvos, so then you give up your life on every mitzvah. But if it's not a time of religious persecution, and a goy is, or presumably any person is trying to, basically says, violate this halacha or die. So then the first question you have to ask yourself is the goy doing it for his own pleasure, or is he doing it just to make you violate the mitzvos? If it's for his own pleasure, and it's one of the other mitzvos, then you yavor v'yaharag, you violate the mitzvah and live, and that is a kiyum, or I shouldn't say it's a kiyum in Kiddush Hashem, but it's a kiyum in v'chai b'hem, that you should live by them and not that you should die by them. The Rambam never actually calls that Kiddush Hashem. Okay, then if he's making you violate just for the sake of violating, then you.
Wait, question on
yeah,
that? Yeah. He does say that's the ketzad of Kiddush Hashem, like right. It's the primary ketzad.
So that's the thing, is that he never says Harizeh Kiddush es Hashem. Kiddush Hashem is only when you die. So it is part of the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, but it does not seem to have a kiyum of Kiddush Hashem. It seems to have a kiyum of v'chai b'hem, whatever that means.
So yeah, I guess I'm confused what that means, that it's part of the mitzvah then.
Yeah. That's. I mean, this is really kind of what we left off on the difficulty yesterday with Chilul Hashem. Is that there's not always there's what the mitzvah is mechayiv you to do, and then there's whether you complying or violating result in a Kiddush Hashem or a Chilul Hashem, right? So it doesn't always line up. So it would be accurate to say that Yavor V'Yahareg is dictated by the halachos of Kiddush Hashem, but it's not. He never says Harizeh Kiddush Hashem, neither here nor in the Sefer HaMitzvos. I realize that doesn't answer your question, but I'm just trying to state the facts here, and it seems like those are facts.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so that is in violating the mitzvos, the shar mitzvos for the goy's pleasure. But if he's doing it just to make you violate them not for his pleasures, then you have to ask yourself, is there a minion of Jews here or not? If there's no minion of Jews, then you violate the shar mitzvos. But if there is a minion, then you yaharei val yavor, then you give up your life. And then in the summary, the Rambam says basically, and this I want to read again just because we just talked about it. Kol mi in Daled, kol mi shenemar bo yavor val yahareg, v'neharag v'lo avar, harizeh mischayev benafsho. So anyone about whom it is said that he should transgress and not be killed, and he is killed and doesn't transgress, harizeh mischayev benafsho. So he's liable for his life. And we said that it might be that he's liable for his life. It makes more sense to say he's liable for his life because of shfichus damim of himself, that he allowed himself to get killed, rather than to say that like he's liable for his life because of violating Kiddush Hashem or Chilul Hashem. So anyone about whom it is said he should be killed and not transgress, and he does that, he's killed and doesn't transgress, that's Harizeh Kiddush Hashem. And if it was among 10 Jews, then he was then that's a public Kiddush Hashem. Kedaniel Hanani Mishal Vazaria, Ukurabi Akiva v'Chaverav. Ve'eluhin harugi malchus she'ein mala al malasan ba'aleim nemar ki alecha horagnu kol yom nechshavnu keton tivcha ba'aleim nemar isvuli chasida korse brisi alei zavach. And we said that maybe later on we'll take a look at what exactly the Rambam means when he says there's no higher level, but he doesn't go into that here. All right, then Dalet, second paragraph in Dalet. V'chol mi shenemar bo yehar go yavor v'avar v'lo nerag harizeh mechala es Hashem. And by the way, I just got to point out here. You notice here, he doesn't even bring the case of kolmi. He doesn't say kolmi shenemar bo ya'avor v'ayahareg v'avar v'lo neharag. He doesn't say that at all. The only time he says that is in the very beginning for the ketzad that we mentioned earlier. So there's in other words, not only does he not call it a Kiddush Hashem, he doesn't even bring it up as in his summary of like what constitutes a Kiddush Hashem and a Chilul Hashem. Okay. So then here, right. So if it's said about you, Yeharag val Yavor, and you transgress and you don't allow yourself to be killed, Harzeh Mechalas Hashem. So then you are desecrating the name. Mim Haya Ba'asara Yisrael, Harzeh Chilas Hashem Barabim. If it's among 10 Jews, then you're desecrating the name in public. Ubitel mitzvos to say. This is the part that was weird. So you're b'machal as Hashem Barabim. Okay, that makes sense. And you're mevatel mitzvos aseh, which, okay, that also makes sense, but apparently, if you were Yavor Vayahareg and you allowed yourself to be killed, that's not mevatel and aseh. So that's odd. And then this is the weird one here. So he says, Kiddush Hashem, the avar al mitzvos losa say shehi chil Hashem. So weird things about that. First of all, he already said Harzeh chil Hashem barabim. So obviously he's over on chil Hashem. Why does he have to say that? And secondly, the fact that he didn't say above that he's over on chil Hashem. Right. The fact that he didn't say. Yeah, the fact that he didn't say if you are supposed to let yourself be killed and you transgress, and you don't, meaning you don't let yourself be killed. He doesn't say. He says Harzeh Mechalas Hashem, but he doesn't say Avar al mitzvos losa say Shehi Chil Hashem. So we said that the most reasonable conclusion here is that there's two things. There's the phenomena of Kiddush Hashem and Chil Hashem, and then there's the avera over like the bitel aseh and the being over on los aseh, and they don't all correspond. You can be mechal as Hashem without being over the lav, and you can be and you can comply with the aseh without being mekayim it, and you could fail to comply with the aseh without being mevatel it, and you could fail to be mekayim the aseh and be mevatel it. So it's like these two tracks going on here. Very confusing formulation. And then he makes the point about how even though in a situation like this where he should have allowed himself to get killed and he wasn't, and he didn't, even though he's over on Chil Hashem, he doesn't get punished because it was ones. And then I really should have read this yesterday. I don't know why I didn't. I started to, and I don't think I did. So he brings the proof from Molech, and then in Dalet he says, "Umay im avodah zara shehi chamura min hakol." If avodah zara, which is more stringent than everything, ha'oved osa ba'ones eno chayav kares, then one who transgresses it by coercion is not liable for kares. Ve'in tzarich lomar misas based in, and needless to say, execution and based in kal v'chomer l'shar mitzvos amuros b'Torah. All the more so for the other mitzvos in the Torah. Uval rayos uomer v'lanara lo saseh davar. And regarding a rayos, it says you shall not do anything to the Na'ara, and that's the Na'ara who gets raped. So because it was ones, then we don't punish her. Okay, so that takes us through yesterday and the conclusion that should have been yesterday. All right, are we ready to go on? Okay. Yeah. Nashim, so this is halacha hey. Nashim she'amru lahen goyim tenu lanu achas mehen unatame osa v'im lav natame es kulchen. So this is clearly a euphemism. When it says natame, it does not mean halachic tuma. It means rape. So if goyim say, give us one of, oh, see now this isn't this the problem I brought up last time? Well, let me read it.
Wait, which problem?
So yeah, women, if the goyim say to the women, give us one of you and we will rape her, and if not, we will rape all of them. Yitamu kulan. So then they should all allow themselves to be raped, and they shouldn't give over any Jewish soul. You shouldn't give over one soul from the Jews. So the problem from yesterday, as I mentioned, that there's no, it's not one of the Gilui Arayos to have Bia with a non-Jew. So why would this be a Harag Val Yavor?
Wasn't that why he's saying you should go do it? Or no, never mind.
I mean, I guess you're right. He's not putting it in those terms, right? He's saying that they should allow themselves to be. I mean, it's almost like this is a separate track here, right? Because now he's switching gears to the question of. I mean, look, even sorry, this is a completely different thing. What am I saying? if you look at the what do you call it? The heading, it's din moser. So this is a halachos of mesirah, of when do we give over people. Okay, so I think it's pashut that that this is a case of ya'avor v'al yahareg, that you should transgress, and that's why he does say, like you pointed out, yitamu kulan, that they should all allow themselves to be raped. This is not even a case of, in other words, this isn't even in the case of where he's giving you the choice between transgress or die. This is one person transgresses or voluntarily, or all of you will transgress involuntarily, and he's saying that we don't give over one of them. Yeah, what am I saying? Yeah, that's really the answer. Okay, and this is going to play out in all the other halachos also. V'chein, and then
sorry, I'm not sure I understood that.
In other words, like this: the cases of in halachos aleph through daled is a goy says, violate this avera or I will kill you. Okay, violate this avera or be killed. So in that case, then if it's gilui arayos, you have to allow yourself to be killed. And if it's another one of the Issurei Biah that's not gilui arayos, then you should violate. Okay, so that's why in the case above, he gave the case of a goy who makes who rapes a woman. That is a case of ya'avor v'al yahareg. Bisman, that's b'midbar mamurim. Bisman shehagoy mischavin lahanas atmo kagon she'anaso livnos lo beso b'shabbos o levasho lo tavshil o anas ish leval lavakiyot b'zeh. That's when we make the distinction and we say that you should transgress rather than allow yourself to be killed, unless it's one of the big three. So that's allow yourself to transgress. But this is a completely different case. This is not transgress or die. This is, hey Jewish girls, either give one of yourselves up or to be raped, or I'll rape all of you. That's not transgress or die. That's one person transgress or all people transgress. And the halacha is we don't give over one of the Jewish souls. So we've switched gears here. Now you can ask, why is this in Hilchos Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem? And that's a legitimate question, because he doesn't even mention moser until Hilchos Tshuva. Like he doesn't mention the category until Hilchos Tshuva. But all these halachos here are going to deal with moser, and they're sandwiched between halachos of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem. So that's a question we might have to answer. Okay, likewise, and it's funny he leads with Biah, because this next one would seem to be even more severe. He says, "V'chein im amru lahem goyim tenu lanu echad mikem v'nahargenu v'im lav naharog kulchem yehargu kulam v'al yimsru lahem nefesh achas miYisrael." Similarly, if the goyim say to them, "Give us one of you to kill, or we'll kill all of you," yehargu kulam v'al yimsru lahem nefesh achas miYisrael. They should all let themselves be killed, and we should not give over any one of the Jewish souls. Okay, then there's the weird exception. V'im yichaduhu lahem v'amru, if they specify one of them and they say, "Tenu lanu ploni o naharogas kulchem," give us that guy or we'll kill all of them. Im haya mechuyav misa kesheva ben bichri, if he was already chayav misa, like Sheva ben Bichri, yitnu oso lahen, then we give him to them. Ve'in morin lahen kain l'chadchila, but we don't indicate to them at the outset, meaning we don't point to the guy who's chayav misa and give him over. Ve'im eno chayav, but if he's not chayav, meaning if the guy that they chose to be to volunteer is not chayav, yehargu kulam, then all of them should be killed. Val yimsur lahem nefesh achas miYisrael, and all and we shouldn't give them over any Jewish soul. Do you know the thing with Sheva ben Bichri?
No.
I had to look it up also. So basically, I'm just going to switch gears 1 second into the Torah because I opened it up here in preparation. We're not going to go through the whole story, but basically what happened is, and I don't know exactly at what point in David's reign this was. It says Vasham Nikra Ish Blial Ushmo Sheva ben Bichri. So there was a guy who was a lawless man named Sheva ben Bichri, Ish Yemini, a Benjaminite, Yiska Bashofar, and he blew in the shofar, V'yomar, and he said, Ein lahem chelik b'David. Oops, I clicked on that by mistake. I didn't mean to. Hold on. We don't have a portion in David v'lo nachal lanu beven Yishai Ish lo Yisrael. So basically, he rebelled against David and Melech. Okay, v'yal kol ish Yisrael me'afrei David afrei Sheva ben Bichri. So then all these Jewish males followed Sheva ben Bichri. V'ish Yehuda davku b'malkam min hayardin v'avad Yerushalayim. And the people of Yehuda clung to their king, to David, from Yarden and Yerushalayim. So basically, this guy led a rebellion against the king. That is chayav misa. And then what happened? So then stuff happens, and this woman is approached by Yoav, and she basically like says, why are you going to destroy everything? So he says, V'yan Yoav v'yomar chalila chalila li im avalev im ashchis. I'm not going to destroy everything. Chalila lochin hadavar. That's not the case. Ki ish mehar Ephraim sheva ben bichri shemo nasa yado. Oh, I got to get the Tommy here. Lochin hadavar. Ki ish mehar Ephraim sheva ben bichri shemo nasa yado b'melech David tnu oso levado ve'elcha me'al ha'ir. So he says there's one guy from Har Ephraim named Sheva ben Bichri who has raised his hand against the king David. Give him to me, the elcha me'al ha'ir, and I'll leave the city. V'tomer ha'isha el Yoav hine rosho mushlach elecha be'arachoma. So she says, behold, his head will be thrown over to you over the wall. V'tavo ha'isha el kol ha'am b'chachmasa. So the woman approached the entire people with her chachma. V'yichrasu es rosh Sheva ben Bichri v'yashlichu el Yoav, and they cut off Sheva ben Bichri's head and they threw it to Yoav. V'yiska b'shofar v'yafutzu me'al ha'ir asher lo halo. Okay, so this is a little bit more severe than the Rambam mentioned. I mean, the Rambam's point here is that we would not, if he just said like, give over one of you and or we'll kill everyone. Give over one of you to be killed or we'll kill everyone, then they would not be able to give over one guy. But since he specified Sheva ben Bichri, and since Sheva ben Bichri was already chayav misa for rebelling against the king, so then they could give him over. Now, this says that she cut off his head, which seems like more than giving him over. So I don't know exactly how to explain that. But for the Rambam's purposes, the point here is that he was specified. He was singled out. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so those were the two dinim of mesirah, and it's specifically by rape, not even a rios rape, but any rape, and then also for for ritzicha. And you see the interesting thing here, by the way, is rape is considered mesiras nefesh achas miYisrael, which is the same term that giving over a Jewish life is. I always thought that was interesting. Is that it's it's equated. And the pasuk equates it, like Zev pointed out yesterday, is it quotes the pasuk on the side note here. Lenara lo sase davar ein lenara chin mavis ki kasher yakum ish al re'ehu urutzacho nefesh kain hadavar hazeh. Just like one person who got up to murder his friend, so is this matter of a woman who's raped. So rape is equal to murder in this sense.
Okay. It's also interesting that the pasuk is like not a guy. Like we think of the classic case.
Right. Pasuk is a case of a Jew. Yeah, that's true. And I guess, and also from the case of Sheva ben Bichri, I mean, Yoav is, these were Jews, all Jews involved, I assume. So, so this is a mesirah even to a Jew.
Also, Yoav was doing the right thing. So it's like kind of weird.
It's also true. Yeah. Okay, next we get into a very interesting case, which is refuah b'davar aser, is what the heading calls it. Okay, so k'inyan she'amru ba'anasin, kach amru b'chalayin. So just like we say by cases of coercion, so too we say by cases of illness. Now, it's not so simple because it's not just like we say it. He's going to say different rules. Okay, so he says like this: Ketzad. How so? Mi shechala v'natalamus. If someone is sick and inclining towards death, the amru harofiim shirifu aso b'davar ploni mi isurin shabatora, and the doctors say that that the remedy is through a certain isur Torah, osin lo. So then we do it for him. Okay, umisrapim b'chol isurim shabatora b'mkom sakana, and we heal him with all isurim of the Torah in a place of sakana. Chutz me'avodah zara v'gilei rayos u'shvichos damim, except for the big three. Avodah zara, gilei rayos u'shvichos damim, shafilu b'mkom sakana, ein misrapim behem. That even in a case of danger, we do not heal with them. V'im avar v'nisrapeh onshinoso besin onish haroilo. Then if he transgresses, with one of these big three, Beis Din gives him the onish that's roy for him. Okay, so you see from here that it's not exactly the same as ones, because if it was ones, we wouldn't give him the onish, right? Like we wouldn't put him to death for doing avodah zara. And I mean, it's implied in the opening halacha also, because he says, I mean, he is acknowledging that there's two categories. It's just, you might think that they're exactly the same, but he's saying not. So we heal l'chatchila with any Issurei Shabbat Torah as long as it's a makom sakana. And obviously you can heal with Issurei Durabanan if it's a makom sakana, just not the vodazar gilui ras mishvil stamim. Okay. Uminayin shafil bimkom sakanas nafashos ein ovrim al achas mishalosh averos elu. How do we know that in a place of danger to life, we don't transgress one of these three averos? Okay, shene'amar, as it says, ve'ahavta is Hashem elokacha b'chol levavacha b'chol nafshacha b'chol me'odacha. You shall love Hashem your God with all of your heart, with all your soul, and all of your resources. Afilu hu notel as nafshacha, and that implies even if he takes your life. So what's interesting is that he doesn't mention this as the reason why we do Yeharig Val Yavor on Avodah Zarah. He only does it for he only brings this down in the context of Sakanas Nafashos and Refuah, which is interesting.
Well,
okay.
Here I guess you're really specifically dealing with the severity of the Isser as opposed to an interpersonal dynamic with another person who's trying to force you to do something.
Right, but doesn't the reasoning still apply that if he says, in other words, the default principle that the Rambam sets up is by mitzvos is v'chai b'hem. So it's really a question on why do I allow the goy to kill me rather than worship avodah zarah. And I believe, I haven't looked at it in a while, I believe the Gemara says that actually, no, I don't remember if the Gemara quotes this, but the point still is, yeah, by other mitzvahs,
yeah, the Gemara does.
Yeah, the Gemara says, v'hafta for.
Yeah, I think it's machlokas. I think it quotes quotes v'hafta for avodah zarah and lo sachalil.
Interesting. Yeah, right. So I think you're right. And so even if the Gemara didn't quote that, though, then the question is, well, why do I have to give? Normally we say I should live by the mitzvahs and not die by them. But yeah, but this, by the case of Avas Hashem, it says even if he takes your life. So Avas Hashem overrides your own life, whereas the other mitzvahs, your life takes precedence.
But doesn't that only apply to
Avas Hashem with avodah zarah? What?
Yeah, so wouldn't that only apply to avodah zarah? Why the other two?
Yeah, so that applies to avodah zarah, and then he brings on another source for the other two. So he says for the other two, "Harigas nefesh achas miYisrael, l'rapos nefesh acheres, olahatil adam miyad anas," and the killing of a Jewish soul to heal another soul or to save a person from the hands of a rapist. Davar shadas nota lohu. This is something that is just common sense. She'in ma'abdin nefesh mipnei nefesh, that we don't destroy one soul for another. Va'arayos, so that is from a just reasoning. I think the way the lashon of the Gemara says is yimar dedam dedamach sumak tfei lifnei makom. Who is to say that your blood is more precious before God? Meaning that we don't make decisions. We don't evaluate people's lives and say this person's life is worth more than the other person's life. So that's why you can't just like do substitutions like this. And then arayos hukshu nefashos, and arayos are compared to nefashos, to lives. Shnemar ki kasher yakum ish al reihu urotzacho nefesh kein davar hazeh. That's what the hekesh in the pasuk is. So again, so for the big three, why do you give up your life for avodah zarah? Because it says v'hafta es Hashem elkacha b'chol levavecha b'chol nafshecha afilu hu notelos nafshecha. And then for shvichus damim, it's im abdi nefesh mipnei nefesh. And then for gilui rayos is compared to nefesh. So that's why it's all three. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe the Rambam is talking about it here, like to apply it to both. Like I think maybe it's referring back to both cases
of Kiddush Hashem and Refuah.
Yeah. Well, we Ones and Refuah. Yeah.
Yeah, Ones and Refuah. Yeah, it's possible. It's just that's not the way he leads in, right? I mean, maybe I guess you could say it's sakanas nefashos. I mean, I guess the case of the goy forcing you is sakanas nefashos.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I hear that. And I guess it makes sense to delay mentioning this until he's gone over both cases, because if he said it just above, you would think that that's that the reason only applies to the Yaharag Val Yavor, but not to any Sakanas Nefashos. Okay, I accept that. Yeah. Okay. Bameh Devarim Amurim She'em Misrafim B'Shar Yisurin Ela B'Makom Sakana. When do we say that that we heal with other Isurim only B'Makom Sakana? Okay. And we don't heal with other Isurim Shelo B'Makom Sakana. Bisman shein derech hana'asan. That's when you are they're done in a pleasurable way. Kmo shema achilin es hachole shkatzim uramasim o chametz b'pesach o shema achilin also b'yom kippurim. Like when we feed someone shkatzim and ramasim, I guess that's considered hana'ah. Okay, which is interesting. On a primitive level, it's hana'ah. O chametz b'pesach, or we feed him chametz on Pesach. O shema achilin also b'yom kippurim, or we feed him yom kippurim. Aval shelo derech hana'asan. But if it is not in the manner of hana. Kagon she'osin lo retia o melugma mechametz o meorla. Like they make for him a bandage or a salve, I think is melugma, out of chametz or orla. O shemashkin also dvarim sheish bahen mar ma'orav im Issurei machal. Or they give him a drink of something that has bitterness mixed into it with prohibited foods. Shahari ein bahem hana lachech, which don't have any hana. Harizeh mutter, so then that's mutter. Afilu shelo b'makom sakana, even not in a makom sakana. Chutz mikilei hakerem ubasar b'chalav, except for mixed species or basar b'chalav. Shehim asurin afilu shelo derech hana'asan, which are asur even if they're not done in the way of derech hana'ah. Lefikach ein misrapim behen afilu shelo derech hana'asan ela b'makom sakana. So therefore, for those two categories of kilai hakerem and basar b'chalav, we only heal with them if it's a makom sakana. So just regarding the main case, again, just to clarify the facts here. So if it is avodah zara giluras or shvichos damim, then you don't heal with those even b'makom sakana. If it is shar isurim and you're using then and it's a makom sakana, then you can heal with shar isurim. But if it's not a makom sakana, you can't. But if it's healing with shar isurim in a non-pleasurable way, then even shelo b'makom sakana you can heal with them. So let's say, for example, let's say like there is a medication that has a coating made, out of, I don't know if this applies to derech hana. I don't think it's derech hana, but let's say like it's a medicine that has a coating made from pork, but it's not like tasty, it's just like tasteless or whatever, maybe that's not even considered food. So if his example suffice, right, is you have foul tasting pork broth, right, with like with nastiness mixed into it. So then you'd be allowed to take it even if you're not in danger, because it's not hana'ah.
That's like you're still sick.
Yeah, you're still sick. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the only exception to that is basar b'chalav and kilai hakerem, and there that's considered to be, you're only allowed to partake of them in b'makom sakana, even if you're not doing derech hana.
That's really weird. It's not like just all kilayim things.
Right. Yeah.
Like
I do find it interesting with the kilayim thing. Yeah. Basar b'chalav is asur b'hana, but so I guess that kind of makes sense. Maybe. Actually, I don't even know if that makes any sense. Yeah, like we don't say this about chametz b'pesach either, but yeah. Does he say on the footnote why? Let's see here. Kilai kerem tavua o yerek hatzameach yachad b'kerem shehagafanim v'hagidulim asurim b'hana. No, he says it's because it's asur b'hana. Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Never mind.
Okay. And by the way, yeah, that's what I just said. Yeah. I don't know why that would be different. Yeah. So just one thing here. I don't think this is like a big deal, but I feel like people we mentioned in terms of like looking at the difference between the popular conception of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem and then the halachic definitions. So I think here too, we know that like people are reluctant to do something that's usur even in a makom sakana. like it's the Briskas are famous for being makil on Yom Kippurim and feeding you if there's any chance of sakana. But like it seems like there are people who are reluctant to that. Like I may have mentioned this earlier in a different context, is that I know someone who we know is a horrible faster, even to the point where she says that on Yom Kippur she will vomit blood, and I've like, and this is like a regular thing, and I've said, please ask like a posek, for for psak. I'm sure if you're vomiting blood, then like that counts as like something that is a sakana, or at the very least, like you could do the thing where like you eat every you in half shear portions, like whatever, so like she said that the first psak she got, which I guess she's still relying on, is that the Rav said you still can't eat, so like people's feelings, and societal standards and neuroses get like, incorporated into here. And I don't know this for sure, but I have a feeling that there are a lot of Jews who would still be squeamish with partaking of Isurim Shalo B'derech Hana'a in a case of Choli Shalo B'makom Sakana. When the Rambam is saying it's mutter, like not Bedi Eved, like, not Padar Val Aser, like, no, straight up, it's like mutter l'chadchila, So it's just, I think this is just one of these areas where people's feelings often override the halacha or influence how they paskin, So just wanted to point that out. Okay. This next case is perhaps the most puzzling. Okay. Mi shenasan enav ba'isha. Someone who falls, well, we'll see, falls in love, but he sets his eyes upon a woman, vichala, and he becomes sick. Now this is lovesick. Okay. It does not mean that he develops tuberculosis when he looks at a woman, okay? So he looks at a woman and becomes lovesick v'natalamos. He becomes terminally lovesick, okay? Where he'll die if he doesn't have her. V'amru harofin, and the doctors say to him, ein lo refuah ad shetiba'el lo, that he has no healing until, that the only remedy to him is if she submits herself to having BO with him. Afilu haisa penuya, even if she is a unmarried woman, meaning it's not adultery and therefore not giloy arayos. Vafilu l'daber imo me'achorei hageder, even for her to speak with him from behind a fence, meaning that he's not even seeing her. Ein morin lo b'kach. We don't instruct him to do this. V'yamus, and he should die. V'lo yoru lo l'daber imo me'achorei hageder, and we don't indicate to him to her to speak to him from behind a fence. Shelo yihiu b'nos Yisrael hefker v'yavo b'devarim elu lifrotz barayos, so that the daughters of Israel do not become hefker, not ownerless, licentious, I guess would be a better translation here, and they will come to be licentious, promiscuous in arayos. So what do you find perplexing or troubling about this halacha?
It's not a rayos. It's
not a rayos, right? It's not even usher, right? It's not usher to speak to a woman from behind a fence. In fact, that's the famous case of Devorah Hashofetes, right? That's how she paskind, is that the Sanhedrin would sit around her and she'd be behind a fence and she would give shear, And if she's a penuya, so again, let's just say why it's not a rayos one more time, right? It's not a rayos because she's a penuya. So at the very least, it would be bia below kiddushin, and that's a losase, but it's not a rayos. You don't get kares for that. And speaking to her behind the fence is not usher at all. So what do you make of this?
Well, couldn't it be like if he's really like lovesick about it, like wouldn't it like give him hear her or whatever? I guess that's still
yeah.
Still
So that's the first,
like,
right. So there is one potential isser that you can say. In fact, let's just go to the sources, because this is Rambam Bekius here. Let me open this up here. Since we're probably not going to get to Hilchos Issurei Biah for another couple of years. Okay, here we go. So this is the Rambam's shita on what is called in the vernacular shomer negia. Okay, obviously I think we've been in yeshiva long enough to know that that's not really a halakha category, right? But this is the Rambam's category here. Kol haba al erva min ha'arayos derech evarim. Anyone who has bia with one of the arayos by way of limbs, right? Which is basically a non-penetrative sexual act, okay? Of many varieties. O shechibek v'nishek derech taiva v'nehenev b'kiruv basar, or he hugs or kisses one of the arayos in a lustful manner and derives enjoyment from the proximity of from skin to skin contact. Okay, kiruv basar I don't think it means proximity of flesh. I think it means like contact, flesh contact. Harizeh lokem in a Torah. So then he gets malchus from the Torah. Shnemar, as it says, levilti asos mechukos hatoevos. And let's just look at that pasuk in context here. 1830. Ushmartim es mishmarti levilti asos mechukos hatoevos asher nasu lifnechem velos nistamu sitamu ubahem ani Hashem elokechem. You should guard my safeguard to not do any of the abominable statutes that were done before you, meaning were done by the nations before you, and you shall not become impure through them. I am Hashem your God. Okay. Kolomar, what does this mean? Oh, so sorry, I skipped a pasuk. V'ne'emar, and it is also said, lo sikruvu lagalos erva. You should not come close to gilui erva. Okay, what does that mean? Kolomar, this means to say, lo sikruvu ledevarim hamavi'in lidei gilui erva. You should not come close to things which bring you to gilui erva. Meaning, kissing, meaning bia derech evarim, or hugging, kissing derech taiva v'hana b'kiruv basar. Those things are not gilui erva, but they bring you to gilui erva. Anyone who does one of these practices, harihu chashud al harayos. Then, if you do this, you're chashud, you're suspected of harayos. Okay, and there are halachic ramifications to that. And then he has one more thing here, which is actually I want to read these next two paragraphs here. Next three paragraphs. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we should read these. Okay, because I think they're relevant to this case. V'asur la'adam likrot biyadav overaglav or lirmos be'enav. Okay, so it's us for a person to I'm just smiling because winking. Last time we had this in Mishnah, I was winking, right? To wink with your hands, or wink with your legs, or wink or hint with your eyes. Okay, but I think in Hebrew, likrot means to signal. Okay, so to signal with your hands, or with your feet, or or hint with your eyes. La'achas min arayos, from one of the arayos. Okay, now again, I'm not poskening, right? I do not think this means giving a thumbs up to an arayos. I don't think we're talking about like signaling in any way. I think we're talking about like making lewd gestures, or like making flirty eyes, to one of the arayos. Same thing to lasachik. Again, it does not mean, like, to quote Rav Pesach when when it's talking about the sexual conduct of Talmidei Chachamim, that it says that I think it says that he should be misachik with his wife before having bia, and I think Rav Pesach said it doesn't mean he should tell her a knock joke. Okay, it's not like schok, like jesting. Again, it means like flirting. Okay, ola hakel rosh, or being lightheaded. Again, lightheaded does not mean like putting on a silly hat. Okay, it means like being there's got to be, I mean, flirtatious is the best word we have in English for this, but there's got to be a better word that is corresponds to lightheadedness. Sexually frivolous, maybe. I don't know exactly how to say it, but no, in other words, it means like all these like flirty behaviors. Even to smell the aroma of perfume that is upon her. Oh, now this is the part, this is why I want to read this. Oh, lahabit biofia, or to gaze at her beauty, aser. Umakin hamiskavin ladavar makas mardus. And we administer whiplashes midurabanan for this. Okay, so hold on just a second. Excuse me. And then vafilu vamistaka afilu be'etba katana shel isha v'nischavin lehanos, and one who gazes even at the small finger of a woman and has intention to derive enjoyment, commission is taco b'mekom haTorah. It's as if he gazed at her genitalia. Vafilu lishmoa kol ha'erva o liros se'ara aser. Even to listen to the voice of an erva or to see her hair is aser. Okay. And then one more paragraph, and then we'll have enough to reflect back on our halacha in Yesodei Torah. All these things, asurin b'chayave lavin. They're asur through chayave lavin, which means not through arayos, not gilui arayos. Like the Rambam mentions this in, it's either the beginning of Ishus or the beginning of Issurei Biah. The difference between chayave lavin and arayos. Arayos are the things that are, actually, let's just look this up. I can never remember whether actually no, I think this is in the beginning of the Issurei Biah, not arayos. So Sefer Kedusha, Issurei Biah, Chayave. Yeah. So he says Haba al achas mikol rayos b'mezid chayav karesh ne'emar asher yasu yase mikol hatoyos elu v'nikosu hanefashos ha'hosos b'kar v'mam. Sorry, this is not what we're talking about here. Ushar harayos kolon b'kares bilvad v'im behem misas basin. So he lists which ones are chayav misa, or he mentions the category. L'fikach im hayu sham edim v'hasra basin malkinoso shkol chayave krisus lokin. Haba'a achas mechayave lavin b'mezid lokim in a Torah. Sorry, lokehu v'hi b'shogeg p'turim mikulan. Haba'a achas min ha'shnios b'mezid malkinos amachas mardos midivrehem. V'haba'a achas mechayave aseh. Sorry, maybe this is gonna be too. It's gonna get us down a rabbit hole within a rabbit hole. So let's just stick to this. We'll just say this is the category of chayave lavin. So all these things are usher from chayave lavin. Umutar lihistako b'pnei ha'penuya ulabodka bein besula bein beula. So you are allowed to gaze at the face of an unmarried woman and to check her out, labodka, bein besula bein beula, whether she is a virgin or whether she is a someone who's already had bia. Like let's say, for example, she was previously married. Kadesha yire imhi na'eb einav yisa'ena, in order to see whether she's beautiful in his eyes and whether he wants to marry her. Ve'ein bezet sad isser. There's nothing usher about that. V'lo'od ela roi lasos kain. Furthermore, it is permissible to do this. Aval lo yistakel derech znus, but you shouldn't look at her in a skeevy way, right? In a I don't know what derech znus, in a promiscuous way. Harihu omer bris karati le'enai. Uma esbonen al besula. That's what Eov said when he's recounting his virtues. I have sealed a covenant with my eyes that I have not gazed upon a. Uma esbonen al besula. Have I ever contemplated a virgin? Yeah. Okay. So I think it's clear from here. So this would be the only, like Zev was saying, like it could be hirhor, but. And maybe you can argue that this is not hirhor. Maybe you could say hirhor is in the los asur achre levavchem achre einechem, which the Rambam doesn't really codify specifically for the achre einechem part. I mean, he brings it down briefly in Avodah Zarah, but he doesn't really talk about it. This, I think, is like the most likely candidate is lo sikruvu legalos erva. But even this is not a rayos, because number one, it's not a rayos. Number one, it's lo sikruvu legalos erva. Secondly, is he says you're chashud on arayos if you do this. It's not that you are committing arayos. Thirdly, it's implied that looking at a woman is usher, not mida oraisa, in which case he would have put it here. It's not under lo sikruvu, because you see here halacha aleph is de oraisa, and then or he gets malchus de oraisa. Here it implies that it's de rabbanan because he gets malchus mardus. I guess it's kind of open what he means when he says. Actually, yeah, I get. I mean, look, you can make the argument the other way also, because you could say that mistakel is a different category, and you could also argue that chayave lavin is something different. But here's the thing: is the case in Hilchos Yesodei Torah we're talking about is looking at a penuya. Is speaking to a penuya. Okay. He doesn't mention anything about speaking to a woman here. Okay. And these are the cases here. And you're even allowed to like look at her for beauty purposes. So it's a big, my point is that it's a big stretch to say that like the case in Hilchos Yesodei Torah is like anywhere near one of the arayos, that's the reason why we took that detour there. That was longer than I thought. I'm sorry about that, but it's Rambam Bekius. We could do Bekius in Rambam. So the question is, how do we explain this? Why do we say that we don't aim morning lo b'kach v'yamus v'lo yoru l'daber imo mechorei hageter?
So the Bnos Yisrael are in Hefker and coming to.
Yes. So what do you make of that?
At least usher. Seems like it's a societal
Yeah.
problem. Like
Okay. Yeah. It's just, right. Meaning we're worried about the effects on society. Okay. Let me just find a Gemara here for 1 second. The nose. Hold on just a second. Oh, sorry. I went to the wrong Gemara. So it turns out in the 2000s, I wrote a 10-page blog post on this on my old blog. And so I didn't remember it until like a couple minutes before Shir. And I referenced this Gemara here. So let's see if this Gemara helps us. And then should I give my theory first? Let me give my theory first. Okay. My theory, let me stop sharing for a second. So here's my theory. My theory is that we're not talking about a halacha deoraisa in Kiddush Hashem and Hilchos Hashem or even mesirah. We're talking about a gezerah, d'Rabbanan. Okay, so here's my proof. Here's the Gemara that's the source of the Rambam. Okay, Amar Rav Yehuda, this is in Sanhedrin, Ayin Hey Amar Aleph. And by the way, when I wrote this blog post, I had support from lots of Achronim, but I haven't looked at them firsthand, and this is a Rambam Bekius here, not an Achronim Bekius here. So, but it is a Gemara Bekius here for Rambam. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. So here's the case. Ma'aseh be'adam echad shenasan einav be'isha achas v'hela libo tina. So there was a case where a guy set his eyes upon a certain woman, and tina came into his heart. What's tina? Passion is what they say here. Actually, let me get the Rashi here also. Tina, nimuk mirov ahava, dissolving, right? Like he melted inside. I think that's melting. Nimuk mirov ahava nitamtem libo v'helachuli, right? So it affected him to actually make him sick. So when I used the term lovesick before, but it's lovesick to the point where you actually become physically ill. Okay. Like in those cases where someone dies of a broken heart, it sounds like this, only it's a broken heart, preemptive broken heart, meaning like he hasn't even like been with her yet. Uba'u v'shalu l'rofim, and they went to the doctors and they said, v'amru, and they said, ein lo takana acheti ba'al. There's no healing until she has bia with him. Amru chachamim yamus v'al tiba'alo. So the chachamim said he should die and not have bia with her. Talmud lefanav aruma. So then they asked, should she stand before him naked? What was the answer? Yamus v'al talmud lefanav aruma. That nope, he should die and she should not stand before him naked. Tesapir imo mi'achorei hageder. Maybe she should speak to him from behind a fence. Yamus v'lo tesapir imo mi'achorei hageder. Nope, he should die and not speak to her from behind a fence. Okay. Pligi bar Rav Yaakov bar Idi v'Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani. So there's a machlokus between those two Amoraim. Chad Amar Eshes Ish Haisa, v'chad Amar Pnuya Haisa. One of them said that she was a married woman. The other one said that she's an Eshes Ish. That she's a Pnuya. She's a unmarried woman. Bishlama Lamanda Amar Eshes Ish Haisa Shapir. So it makes sense if you say that she was a married woman, because then that's literally Gilui Arayos. That's adultery. Okay, and then all these things would make sense. And you could even say speaking to her from behind a fence, would qualify as lo sikru v'legalos ereva, because that's actual Arayos. Ella Lamanda Amar Pnuya Haisa Maikuli Hai. But if you say that she was unmarried, so then what's the big deal? Like, why shouldn't she stand naked in front of him or speak? Or, actually, I don't want to spoil it. It's going to say, okay, Rav Papa Amar Mishum Pagam Mishpacha, because of a blemish to her family. Okay, look at Rashi. Mishum Pagam Mishpacha. Mishpacha Seisha Shahayu Boshin Badavar. So if they basically let her do one of these things, then her family's going to be ashamed. Okay. Now, Rav Acha Bred Rav Ika, never heard of him. Rav Acha Bred Rav Ika Amar Kadesh Lo Yehu Bnos Yisrael Prutzos Barayos. So the daughters of Israel should not be prutzos, should not be licentious with arayos. And then it says one more thing. Very easy solution. Okay, if she's a penuya, what should the solution be to avoid all this?
Marry them.
Marry her, right? She's a penuya, okay? And then you don't have any Isser at all. So the Gemara suggests that V'lin Saba Minsav, I don't know exactly how to punctuate that, or to vowelize that. So why doesn't he marry her? Okay. So the answer, funny answer. Oh, sorry, I forgot this Rashi. Shlo Yehu Bnos Yisrael Prutos Barayos Lamu Bifnei Hanashim Laseis Bahem Einehem V'Yimsum Lahem Labia. So what's going to happen is women will then walk in front of Jewish men and then make the men lovesick so that you can take advantage of this heter. So that's the worry about the Prutos. Okay, fine. But now let him marry her. Rashi says V'Linsva Minsav De'Ein Kan Prutos Barayos Dekulhu Liavdan Hachi V'Linsvan. So he could do all these things if he's married to her, right? And there's no issue of arayos. V'inkan avera ela mitzvah. Not only that, it's a mitzvah, right? This is talk about shalolishmaz. If you're sick and gonna die, and marrying this woman is a mitzvah, so then let them get married. So now the Gemara gives a very funny answer. Lo misva miasva daite. His mind will not be appeased. Okay. Meaning, it's not going to cure his love sickness. Why? Kid Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Miyom Shachar Beis HaMikdash Nitla Ta'am Bia, V'nitna La'ovre Avera, Shnemer Mayim Gnuvi Miyim Taku V'lechem Sasayim Yinam. Okay, Mishlei Pasuk is he's not going to be appeased. In other words, he thinks that if he marries her, then that'll cure his love sickness. But really, no. Once he marries her, it's not going to cure his love sickness. Why not? Because from the time the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the pleasure of Bia was taken from people and given to those who are over Avera. And as Mishlei says, stolen waters are sweet and bread eaten in hidden places is pleasurable. So look at Rashi here. So lo min misva daite v'lo yirape b'kach, he will not be healed. Miyom shacharav beis hamikdash kashel hakoach midagos rabos. So the power, I guess, of the Tam Bia has been diminished due to many worries. V'ein ruach kama be'ish lios ta'ev le'ishto, and man's desire, spirit is not awakened to desire his own wife in the same way as it was before the Beis Mikdash. Nital Tam Bia. Leficha nital Tam Bia. That's what it means, or therefore the Tam Bia has been taken. Nitnan over Avera. Sheitzar hara tokvan umar tavasan. That the Yitzar hara is awakened and more powerful. Dichsiv lechem sasayim yinam. Bread eaten in hidden places is sweet. Lishna ma'alya naka. That's a euphemism. Kamok ki im halechem asher hu ochel. So it means only like forbidden acts of sexual of sexuality are pleasurable in the way that regular bia with your wife was before the mikdash was destroyed. Okay, so what do we see from all this? I mean, especially from the pagam mishpacha thing, this has nothing to do with Yehareg Val Yavor and nothing to do with Sakanas Nefashos. Okay, it is a takana, or a gezerah, I should say, that they did not want to allow psak to let lovesick people even speak with a woman from behind a fence, because that's going to lead to pritzus in Klal Yisrael. And again, the fact that the reason given, pritzus is one answer, but you see from the Gemara, why would they let this guy die? Because we're worried about the shame to her family. That's definitely like, I mean, it's astounding that they would consider making a gezerah like that, or that they made a gezerah like that according to Rav Papa. But you see from here, this is a completely extrinsic thing, has nothing whatsoever to do with Sakanas Nefashos. And moreover, I want to say like this, what is the gezerah? The gezerah is not that the guy has to let himself die. It's that the Rabbanan cannot instruct him to have bia with her. Okay? And you see that, he says it twice. Vafilu l'daber imo me'achorei hageder ein morin lo bakach. We do not paskin for him to do this. V'yamus, and he should die. V'lo yoru lo l'daber imo me'achorei hageder. And we don't paskin for him to do this from behind a getter. And if you look through the Rambam in the Mishnah Torah, when it uses this phrase of ein morin kain, all the cases are like kachi halacha of ein morin kain. This is what the halacha is, but we don't paskin to this. Case I'm thinking of here is the case of Pinchas of what's the phrase? Boil arama. What's the phrase?
Zealotry.
Yeah, but they call it like boil arama or something like that. Like say again.
Ramis.
Ramis. Yeah, boil ramis. Yeah, that's what it's called. Boil ramis. So that's a case where if you see whatever the case, I forgot the parameters of the case there, the Jew having public bia with a non-Jewish, so the halacha is you do an act of Pinchas, but Beis Din is not allowed to tell you to do it, and it uses the same phrase, ein morin kain. So again, I'm not poskening here, but it's implied from the Rambam here that if you are, if you're this guy who's lovesick to the point where you're dying, and your own nefesh is at stake, seems like this guy should go and have bia with her, beiser, to save his life, because it's not, again, not if she's married, but if she's a penuya and he's literally going to die and the doctors tell him to. It's just that Beis Din can't poskin that, because if Beis Din poskined it, it would be like endorsing it. And then you get into all these situations where the Jewish, like Rashi said, where Jewish women would take advantage of this loophole, or Jewish men would take advantage of this loophole, and it would lead to priesthood in Klal Yisrael. Is that a fair reading? Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, I noticed that when we were reading it before.
In Morin Kane. And look, the very fact that he brings the reasoning, Shelo Yihiyu Benos Yisrael Hefker Vayavau B'Devarim Elu Lifrots Barayos, he shouldn't even need to say that if it's just Asur Me'ikar Hadin. Like he doesn't say, for example, like it's Asur to give up your life. You have to let yourself die rather than heal yourself through Avodah Zarah. Kidei Shelo Yihiyu B'nei Yisrael, blah, 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 blah. Like, no, it's just, that is the halacha. This is all Lashon Gezerah and Lashon about what do you call it? Getting people to, or endorsing this type of behavior. In case you're curious, by the way, the guy, the reason why I wrote the initial blog post, which again is not on my current blog, is because someone wanted to say to me that speaking to a woman who you're not married to is chayav misa, and they wanted to prove it from this halacha. So I wrote this long refutation saying it's a complete distortion of the Rambam to say that speaking to a penuya is chayav misa, and like I ended up going through all these this reasoning here for that, and I think it's clear from the context. And this is why context is so important, by the way. I mean, look, if you just took this halacha in isolation, I could see why you would think that you should die rather than speak to a woman, a penuya from behind a getter, right? Like, but it's clear from the entire context and from the Gemara and from all this other stuff that that's not what the Rambam means. Okay. So yeah.
Wait, is this like actually possible to be so lovesick that you're gonna die?
I don't know. I don't know what we hold, not what we hold. I don't know what medical science says nowadays. I mean, it does seem like there is such a thing as like dying of a broken heart. I don't know medically what that means, but like there's so many cases where like, one person like dies and then the other person falls into some sort of depression and then dies also, like whether it's like two spouses or like a parent and a child, and like the psyche can have a huge impact. Like I think in one of my Stoic Jew podcasts, I talked about the voodoo practice of bone pointing, where like the shaman in the village is believed to have power that if he casts a spell on someone and says that you're going to die, the person will actually die. And it's all a psychosomatic symptom where like, because they believe in the magic, it actually has a physiological response and they actually die from the spell, even though it's all psychological. So maybe it's possible. If you find if anyone wants to look up and see whether it's possible to die from a broken heart, let me know. It'd be interesting to see. You see, one thing I was going to say though is that you see though that if it is possible, you have to get it diagnosed, because he says that the rofim tell you, that he's going to die. You can't just be like, oh, I feel like I'm going to die if I don't get with this woman. Okay, I think the plan will be like this. We have a few more halachos in the parak. So I think next time, let's aim to do the rest of the parak. And then the Rambam wrote a thing called Ma'amar Kiddush Hashem, which I heard was a thing. I have not actually learned it. I heard it was a thing that he wrote when so many of the Jews were being like forced to convert by the sword. And I've never been through it, but if would you guys be interested in going through it? I don't think it's super long, but while we're here and talking about Rambam and Kiddush Hashem.
We did just do it in Migdal.
Oh, you did? Okay, fine.
But
I was gonna say I was really interested in that, and I was actually specifically wondering about that when we were doing the halacha.
Okay, I if you just did it in Migdal, then I don't want to do it. So
I didn't do it in Migdal.
Yeah. So maybe we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's a we?
Yeah, he just married.
all I said was I just did it.
Oh, you just did. Okay. Who did?
No, you said we.
Oh yeah, I did it. Shmuel David gave a share on it last year.
Oh, last
So.
year. Okay, fine. Okay, so maybe we will do it since it's a minority that did it, and then Zev, you could either skip that session or you can chime in with wisdom from Shmuel David, and yeah. What was it long? I still haven't looked at it in depth.
Yeah, it wasn't too long.
Okay, I mean if we do it Bekius wise,
Yeah.
Yeah,
We did
All
it
right,
once
so
a week, so it took us a long time, but
okay, I'll definitely take a look at it ahead of time just to scope it out and see if it's realistic. But I feel like it was. I mean, well, I guess I should ask. Did you find that it might give us more insight into? Yeah. Okay. I figured it would because it's the Rambam. But yeah. Okay. All right. Sounds good. So until next week.
Thank
All right.
you.
See ya. Bye.